Chicken or fish? Apple or Microsoft? A brand new Ferrari or the latest Porsche 911? Do we really know why we buy what we buy? And how would we find out anyway? Well, interestingly, you might talk to a statistician, someone like senior tutor at the University of Auckland, Dr. Andrew Balemi. Welcome, Andrew.
Oh, thank you.
So how does a statistician help us understand what motivates our consumer decisions?
Well, it's a good question. Well, first of all, you've got to look at what people say and what people do. And there's quite a dissonance between what they say and what they do. Having been a market researcher and a statistician, one thing I have learned is that most people make their decisions based on, well, most people believe they make their decisions based on their brain, but most decisions are based on their heart or somewhere lower. Example, a red sports car.
Yes.
When you're my age, midlife crisis car. It's about potency, virility,
Exactly.
or the lack thereof. My bank, why did I choose my bank? I chose my bank because they gave me a $1,000 overdraft when I was a 22-year-old student.
Right.
And I've never stopped banking with them. It's a lousy bank. I won't name who they are, but I just can't be bothered leaving them.
So that's laziness rather than
there's
brand
apathy.
loyalty.
There's apathy. But rationally, I should have moved on to Taranaki Savings Bank or
Yes.
Kiwi Bank many years ago.
Yes.
I just can't be bothered. So there's the irrational part of my apathy and my sloth, and then there's the other desire, like I want to appear virile or
Yes.
magnificent, and But I will tell you that it's all about
Yes.
the size of the car and its utility and everything else.
In
like
fact,
that, or,
red makes it go faster. It's
Yeah,
been
precisely.
researched.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
So there's a huge dissonance between what people say and what they do.
So how would you get past that? How do you dig down?
You've got to be very careful how you ask the questions. You've
Yes.
got to ask them indirectly. So you get to what they really want by other means. A classic technique in market research is to ask people, in an ideal situation, in an ideal place, what would you be doing, or what would another person be doing? It's almost like that person who goes to the doctor and says, a friend of mine has these conditions, when they're really talking about themselves. So you get them to talk about themselves and what they want. The other thing you've got to do is you've got to get people to make trade-offs. If you say, what's the most important thing to you with, global, starvation, world poverty, global warming, crime, violence, right?
Yeah.
Is that something you worry about? People will say yes. Now, what are you most worried about?
Right.
And that's the most important thing. So,
Yeah.
There's some very, very interesting things about humans. We're not entirely rational. We're rational within the context of our existence, but that's not always something someone else can understand.
So it makes you think that the data that you get, or how reliable would the maths data be, given there are so many variables? How do you kind of get something, a model of people's behaviour that actually tells you something that you can bank on?
Well, there is ways out of that. What you can do is you can get data on what people are feeling, and then you can get an actual model on their behaviour,
Right.
by sales data.
Yeah, because you can actually find out what people do, can't you?
That's right. You've got the
hard.
behavioural information.
Yeah.
But the hardest thing is the motivational information.
Yes.
And that's where market researchers come in, is they're trying to work out, why is someone buying that beer?
Yeah.
Beer's a great example. With beer, it's very much occasion-based. For blokes who drink beer, they'll drink a different brand of beer when they're with the lads.
Yes.
22, 24-year-olds, they'll go
Yep.
out there, might be Lion Red, Tui.
Yep.
When they're out in a hunting bar, and this is a different occasion, when they're out trying to get themselves a girlfriend, or girlfriend's trying to get themselves a boyfriend, they'll drink entirely different brands, depending on the occasion. In fact, so much so that they'll actually make sure that you see the brand.
Oh my. And
Next time you go to a bar, look for the Heineken badges or the Stella Artois.
So hunting, what is it? Heineken is a hunter brand, is it?
They might be sort of going out. That's sort of like saying,
So it's male bonding time, then you've got opposite sex stuff.
And then there's barbecue time, and there's different occasions depending on the drink and where you are and your age profile on that.
And obviously, the advertising campaigns then target that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And you wonder, there's that same people, you know, which chicken and egg, which came first? Did they set up that image and then we buy into it, or did they see that was happening and go, well, let's just build on top of that, or a bit of both?
Bit of both, yeah. Well, the best advertising is word of mouth.
Yes.
And that's where Apple do so well, you know, the iTunes and iPod and stuff like that. You know, in many ways it's, you know, if you can get yourself into a product that's aspirational,
yes,
and proves your worth, then you don't have to spend so much on advertising to, you know, to get it, to get people to buy it. And you can actually see the growth on something like Apple, you know, going up exponentially. You know, 3 friends tell 3 friends tell 3 friends, and then boom. As soon as the market gets saturated, they've got to find another application. Telecommunications is classic too. You know, as soon as you've got, you know, you've saturated the market with, you know, a certain phone type, then you've got to have other features involved, like cameras and file sharing and, you know,
new
iPhones,
applications
etc.,
to build on top and build on top.
That's right, they saturate it and then they give another feature and they keep growing the market. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going from a student perspective. If a student was setting up a stat investigation, what sort of things would they need to do to make sure that the sort of data they're getting will give them reliable conclusions off the back of that?
Well, probably the most important thing is, who do you want to talk to? You know, what is your target population? And make sure that you're sampling from that target population. A lot of people forget that. They just grab people and then they say this, you know, or these are the people who answered, and therefore that's representative of everyone else, and that's not necessarily the case. So make sure that you're randomly selecting from the population of interest. So be very clear who you want to talk to,
yes,
and make sure that you are ensuring that you get a representative sample from that population.
So if you're doing beer, no good talking to the mums.
No,
to talk to the guys
I want to talk to 18 to 25-year-olds who drink at least, you know, 3 beers a week.
Yeah.
Boom. That's my definition of my population. Then you have to go out there and find them.
Yes.
That can be difficult. Although if you give them incentives for a few beers and go to bars or, you know, whatever, then you can find them. But you've got to make sure that you're not, you know, you want to talk to a representative sample, so you don't just talk to the good-looking guys or the, you know, the friendly guys or something like that. You want to be, you know, having a sort of random mechanism for selection.
Okay. So
because we're terrible at getting representative samples. We think we're good at it, but we're lousy at it.
It's probably harder than you might think, isn't it?
Oh, very hard. Yeah. Well, you know, and a very human response. I mean, I'm not going to talk to the guy with tattoos with a pool cue in the corner of the bar, you know. Whereas, you know, the beer people want you to talk to that person, perhaps. So,
yes. Because
he's representative of beer drinkers.
And how do you incentivise that?
So that, you know, that's why, you know, so you need to get a representative sample. Then, just, you know, equally importantly, you need to make sure that you're asking the right questions. You know, questions that aren't completely obvious. Now, humans are usually, most people are pretty good, but there's people who want to be your friend and give you the right answer, and then there's people who want to sabotage your questionnaire.
Yes.
Yeah. So you've got you know, the lunatic end of the spectrum can really screw things up. So you've got to ask questions in such a manner that they don't know what the answer is or where you're driving things, and that's as much an art as it is a science.
I mean, there's a classic example is the smacking referee.
Yeah.
You know, everyone, a lot of people, and you know, myself included, just hated the question. It was so obviously pointed in a particular direction. It was like, and how much did you spend on this? Yes,
well, you can invert that question and say, well, you know, do you think children should have the same rights against physical abuse as adults?
Yes.
And it's an equally, you know, valid but pointed question, and it would give completely different answers. So, you know, you really have to work hard at getting the questionnaire right. In market research, there's these group of people called qualitative researchers who are wonderful. They usually female, predominantly female, not exclusively, but they psychoanalyze people's relationships with brands, and they have a whole language and repertoire of skills to find out what's going on. And
it's like psychological profiling or something, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, they might use some sort of Freudian Jungian analysis of the archetypes or something. But it's actually, you know, originally coming from a very sort of science and hard science background, I used to, you know, look at their work with some skepticism, but without their input, you can't get the questionnaire right. And without a good questionnaire, you can't get the right results.
You can't get your info.
Mm.
What about the area of resampling? How
Well,
important is that?
yeah, well,
And
there's
what is it? What is it?
sampling and then there's resampling. The thing was with resampling is you're trying to get a long-term view of what's happening with your estimates.
Right.
So whenever you take a sample, it's
Snapshot.
it's a snapshot, but it's a very grainy photo.
Yes.
And it's not a census. It's not the whole picture. So you're going to pay the price for not having the complete information.
Yeah.
So with resampling, or the theory of resampling is you can say, well, what's going on with the long-term fidelity of that photo. To use that analogy. So resampling, is one of the most important parts of the statistical process. I have one sample, but I could have many samples. It's a little bit abstract, but what you have is you have incomplete information or one realisation from one sample.
Mm.
What does that say about the population in general?
Yeah.
And that's what the whole basis of statistical inference is, which is a flash expression for answering the questions of interest.
Yes. Yeah.
Can I infer from my incomplete information what's really going on?
So here's a question. Are you a market researcher or are you a mathematician?
Ooh.
And, which do you love more? Are you a bit of both?
I would say a bit of both. I think of myself as an applied mathematician. I'd say a statistician first because I can apply it to just about every field. A particularly interesting field is market research, and I think of that as the ecology of human beings. So I don't have any problem thinking about the ecology of the bumblebee, the ecology of human beings. I mean, we're all out there trying to find resource and mate and breed and procreate and do what animals do, and you've got these models for understanding, or speculating what they do and answering those questions. So, be it beer or be it, nectar, it's the same sort of stuff, really.
Yeah, well, a lot of people would say it is nectar, isn't it? Certainly. And so do you think that the area of stats is a good one to get into in terms of job opportunities, in terms of different types of work you can do? Oh God, yeah. No, if you can, master the concepts, if you can, you have to work at them, but you can. Anytime someone comes to you with data, you can answer their questions or be of use to them. As you say, anything from bees to beer, it's all there. It doesn't matter. I mean, if you look at growth rates of, some populations or the number of people who are picking up iPhones, it's pretty much the same thing. It's transfer of information. So you've got these set of skills that can answer those questions or get to some sort of understanding of those questions. And there's lots of work out there. Yeah. Everyone's got data now. That's the amazing thing, and very few people know how to. They have questions too, but they don't know how to translate the questions to the data to get the answers, and that's where statisticians are so valuable. They can make the connections and yeah. And of course, I wouldn't want this interview to be too successful because there's scarcity, and with money there's scarcity. So you obviously like what you're doing. I love it. Yeah, I do. Because now you've worked in the real world, but now not the real world, as they say in the industry, and now you're back at university teaching and so forth. Yeah, no, I do love it. I think the thing is you're useful. Yeah. And increasingly in a wired up world, there's more and more questions and more data, and there's lots of interesting questions to be answered. So you acquire the discipline so you can answer the questions, and that's good. That's great. Does it help you answer personal questions about why and how you do your own things? Oh yeah, no. Where I'd say, having worked in market research, you've turned a corner when you actually start stalking people in supermarkets. And you go, so it was you. Why did you? Yeah, exactly. Why did you buy the white toffee pops at the top shelf? And then people look at you and they go, "Stay away from me, freak." But you actually start thinking, why? Or when next time you look at an ad, okay, what's the brand? Do you recall the brand? What's the execution? What are they driving? They got 30 seconds to get into your head and stuff like that.
endlessly fascinating.
Oh, well, thanks very much for talking to us today.
You're
Appreciate
absolutely
it.
welcome.